What happens when a late-night whisper of affection between a young black girl and a white sheriff turns into a shout for help lost in the shadows? Why does her color bring her love into question and her life into peril? This is a story where forbidden love meets a fatal end, and justice stands blindfolded. Today, we uncover the layers of a deeply unsettling case in 18-year-old black girl's secret affair with racist Alabama sheriff leads to murder. We'll explore how a secret romance in a segregated town spirals into a public spectacle of horror and heartbreak, challenging us to confront the most uncomfortable truths about race, power, and the very essence of justice. Before we delve deeper into this web of intrigue, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Now, let's crack this case wide open. Under the sprawling skies of Alabama, where cotton fields blend into the horizon and the echoes of the civil rights era still resonate in the air, lived a young African-American woman named Sarah. At 18, her spirit was as vibrant as the murals she painted on the weathered walls of her hometown. Murals that captured dreams of unity and a brighter tomorrow. Sarah's life was a tapestry of youthful hope and boundless potential, woven with the rich threads of artistic passion and a deep love for her community. Despite the persistent undercurrent of division, Sarah's ambition was to bridge gaps with her art, to speak in colors louder than the voices of dissent that had long divided her town. Each stroke of her brush was a defiance of the status quo, a bold statement of her belief in change. Sarah saw her world not as it was, but as it could be, free from the chains of historical prejudice that still clung tightly to the old town's roots. Her aspirations reached beyond the small, segregated corners of her existence, dreaming of galleries and audiences that knew no color, only beauty. Yet, even as her art gained local acclaim, the societal barriers she sought to overcome in her work quietly constrained her own life's canvas, framing her dreams within limits hard set by generations of inequality. Across the same town, under the same vast Alabama sky, Sheriff John Miller represented a starkly different pillar of the community. A figure of authority, John was the latest in a long line of lawmen, his family's name etched into local history, his legacy seemingly as solid as the courthouse walls. To the public, he was a steadfast guardian, a symbol of order and tradition in a town that valued both above all else. But behind the badge, the sheriff harbored a complexity that few could or would discern. His authority was tinted by the shadows of a bygone era, his ideals about law and order sculpted by the silent teachings of his forefathers. Teachings that did not always align with the principles of justice and equality that he publicly upheld. John's days were spent navigating the delicate balance between upholding his duty and maintaining the subtle social hierarchies that had defined the town for decades. His public image was immaculate, crafted through years of careful interaction and calculated goodwill. Yet in private, the sheriff wrestled with the dichotomies of his world, between the man he was expected to be and the man he sometimes feared he might actually be. Rumors of his deeper, unvoiced prejudices occasionally surfaced, whispered among those who knew him best or observed him too closely, suggesting alignments and sympathies that, if true, would betray his oath to serve all equally. Despite these whispers, his personal life remained largely obscured. In the glow of early summer, the town's annual art and culture festival brought the community together, weaving the diverse threads of Alabama's heritage into a tapestry of celebration. It was here, among the fluttering canvases, that Sarah and Sheriff Miller's paths first crossed. Sarah recalled, "He approached my booth with a kind of hesitant curiosity, as if he knew that stepping into my world could change everything." Their conversation began over her art, which depicted the rolling southern landscapes and the faces of those who shaped them. He had a way of looking at my paintings that felt like he was really seeing the world through my eyes, Sarah would have shared, her voice tinged with the nostalgia of that first spark. As the festival lights dimmed, their clandestine relationship ignited. Their meetings were crafted with the precision of a painter's stroke, each one carefully shaded with the nuances of secrecy and danger. We found solace in the shadows, Sarah would have described, where the quiet corners of the park became our refuge from the world's prying eyes. But as the summer waned, so too did the novelty of their secret. Each whisper of affection, each stolen moment began to feel more like a burden, Sarah might have lamented. The thrill of secrecy turned into a suffocating silence, as heavy and humid as a late Alabama summer night. As the relationship matured into the deeper shades of fall, the complexities of their bond became more apparent. The initial exhilaration of their forbidden meetings gradually gave way to a profound awareness of the implications. The more entangled our lives became, Sarah would have confessed, the more I felt the weight of every glance, every touch. What started as a romance slowly morphed into a clandestine dance, each step calculated, every turn fraught with tension. Sheriff Miller, ensnared by the dualities of his life, grappled with the juxtaposition of his public duties and private desires. To the world, I was the law, the steadfast guardian of our community's morals, he might have expressed in a rare moment of candor. But with Sarah, I was just John, a man caught between his heart and his heritage. This internal conflict was exacerbated by the inherent power imbalances in their relationship. The badge I wore was not just a symbol of authority, but a barrier that kept us worlds apart, even as we lay side by side, he could have reflected. This period of their relationship, as analysed by experts in the documentary, would reveal the psychological toll of such secretive liaisons. A psychologist specialising in emotional trauma might explain. Secret relationships, particularly those involving significant power disparities, can lead to a complex web of emotional manipulation and dependency. Additionally, a sociologist could comment on the racial tensions, noting, in a community where historical and racial divides are deeply embedded, their relationship was not just unconventional, it was an affront to the unspoken rules that governed their world. As the leaves began to fall, so too did the facades that Sarah and Sheriff Miller had maintained. Looking back, Sarah might have mused, it was like watching the autumn leaves drift from the trees. Beautiful but bittersweet, each one a reminder of the inevitable end to our story. As winter's chill began to seep into the town, the relationship between Sarah and Sheriff Miller reached a tipping point. The air was thick with the scent of impending frost, mirroring the coldness that had begun to infiltrate their once passionate affair. The secrecy that once cloaked us like a protective shroud became a chain, Sarah might have confided, each link forged from lies, each promise a padlock. The town, too, seemed to sense the shift, its sleepy streets whispering of something amiss. Tensions escalated as Sarah struggled with the confines of their secret. She began to push back, to question the shadows in which they lingered. Why must our love be hidden like some dark, guilty secret? She might have questioned during one of their last meetings, her voice a mixture of desperation and defiance. Sheriff Miller, feeling his control slipping, responded not with reassurance, but with a stern warning of the dangers of exposure. You know the stakes, Sarah. We both do, he would have said, his tone more of a command than a plea. In these final days before the tragedy, the sheriff's professional life became increasingly intertwined with the personal, as rumours of his nighttime absences and unexplained behaviours began to circulate among his deputies and the community. The man who once stood as a pillar of virtue seemed to be crumbling, a close colleague might recount. hinting at the sheriff's inner turmoil spilling over into his duties. The night of December 5th was unusually cold, the winter sky clear and unforgiving as stars watched over the town. The events of that night would soon send shockwaves through the community, painting a starkly different picture of the man they thought they knew and the young woman caught in his world. Sarah, driven by a mix of fear and resolve, decided it was time to confront the sheriff, to demand they bring their affair into the light or end it altogether. The meeting was set at an old cabin on the outskirts of town, a place that had served as their secret haven many times before, but tonight it was the scene of something far more sinister. Forensic evidence later pieced together a timeline of their final hours. Fingerprints on the door handle, 2 glasses on the table, her scarf on the chair, and a single bullet casing found near the window. As the night progressed, a neighbor reported hearing a car arrive, and some time later the muffled sound of what could have been a gunshot. By the time the police arrived, alerted by a concerned friend who knew of the meeting, it was too late. Sarah was found, lifeless, her dreams and dilemmas silenced by a single shot. Sheriff Miller was nowhere to be found initially, his whereabouts at the crucial moment a mystery that would spark a flurry of questions. As dawn broke over the town, the reality of what occurred at that lonely cabin began to sink in. But the full story was far from clear. What led to the gunshot heard in the dead of night? And where was Sheriff Miller when his lover needed him most? As the town of Alabama woke to the grim news of Sarah's untimely death, the local police department was thrust into a case that would soon reveal its deep-seated complexities. Initially, the investigation circled vaguely around unknown suspects, with Sheriff Miller leading the charge, his role seemingly that of a bereaved protector seeking justice for a fallen citizen. It was like watching a play where the director is also the villain, yet none of the actors know the script. An external investigator later commented during an interview. Doubts began to surface when one of Sarah's friends bravely came forward, hinting at the secret relationship with the sheriff. Despite this, the sheriff's influence and the town's reluctance to suspect one of its most prominent figures led to a frustrating delay in naming him as a suspect. We looked at every angle, but it seemed impossible at the time to turn our suspicions towards Sheriff Miller, one of the local deputies might recall, reflecting the initial resistance within the department. Family reactions were mixed, with Sarah's relatives despairing at the slow progress and seeming partiality of the investigation. They protected him because they couldn't believe one of their own could do such a thing, a family member would express in a heart-wrenching interview, their grief palpable and their frustration boiling over into demands for external intervention. The break finally came when forensic evidence collected from the scene, a combination of ballistic analysis and a deeper examination of the sheriff's whereabouts on the night of the murder, began to point unmistakably towards him. This shift marked a dramatic turn in the investigation, leading to the involvement of state authorities who took over from the local police. With the evidence mounting, Sheriff Miller was arrested, a moment that sent shockwaves through Alabama and beyond. The trial that followed was a spectacle of justice under the harsh spotlight of public scrutiny. Court sketches from the proceedings show a courtroom packed to the brim, the expressions of the attendees ranging from disbelief to vindictive satisfaction. As the trial unfolded, sound bites from the courtroom provided a stark soundtrack to the drama. The prosecution presented a compelling narrative, detailing the clandestine relationship and the events leading up to Sarah's murder. This was no crime of passion, but one of control, the prosecutor would argue, their voice firm and convincing as they pieced together the timeline of the murder. Public reaction was divided. Some community members rallied in support of the sheriff, unable to reconcile the man they knew with the accused murderer in court, while others expressed outrage and support for Sarah's family, calling for justice and accountability. "How could he? He was supposed to protect us, not break us," a town resident would comment outside the courthouse, encapsulating the betrayal felt by many. Throughout the trial, real court sketches captured the tension and emotion of the courtroom, from the determined faces of the prosecution team to the stoic, sometimes defiant, demeanor of Sheriff Miller. The trial culminated in a tense, breath-held verdict reading, leaving the town and viewers alike anxious for justice and resolution. As the gavel fell and the echoes of the verdict faded from the courthouse, the town of Alabama found itself at a crossroads. The conviction of Sheriff Miller not only marked a pivotal legal outcome, but also sparked a profound re-evaluation of trust and authority within the community. It was as if a veil had been lifted, a local journalist might reflect, exposing a system that had allowed power to shield guilt. In the aftermath, there was a concerted push to reform local law enforcement practices. Training on ethical behavior, transparency initiatives, and community outreach programs were implemented to rebuild trust. A panel discussion featuring legal experts and community leaders highlights these changes, discussing the challenges and successes of reform efforts. The impact on Sarah's family was bittersweet. While justice was served, the loss remained a gaping wound. "We found justice, but not peace," a family member would sorrowfully note, encapsulating the personal toll amidst the public proceedings. Schools and community centers organized forums and workshops, using her story as a case study for understanding and combating racial prejudice and promoting a more inclusive community dialogue. As we close this chapter on a story that has touched the hearts and minds of many, we turn to you, our viewers. This case raises profound questions about justice, morality, and the role of authority in our lives. How do we balance the scales of justice in a world where power can so often tip them? And what does this case tell us about our own community's values and our responsibilities to each other? We invite you to share your thoughts and reactions in the comments below. What changes would you advocate in your own communities? How can we ensure that those entrusted to protect us do not become the ones we need protection from? Your voice is crucial in continuing this important conversation. Engage with us, share this story with others, and help us bring light to these vital issues. Remember, change begins with awareness, and justice needs a community to stand behind it. If you haven't already, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an episode. Next time, we'll uncover another case where betrayal, secrets, and unimaginable decisions changed lives forever.